To Each His Own by Leonardo Sciascia. The letter arrived in the afternoon delivery. As usual, the postman laid the party-colored sheaf of advertising circulars on the counter first. Then, carefully, almost as if there were some danger of its exploding, the letter. It was a yellow envelope. A small white rectangle bearing the printed address had been pasted on it. "I don't like this letter," the postman said. The pharmacist glanced up from his paper. He took off his glasses. Bored but also curious, he said, "What?" "I say I don't like this letter." With his index finger, he pushed it slowly across the marble counter toward the pharmacist. Without touching the envelope, the pharmacist leaned over to look at it. Then he stood up, replaced his glasses, and studied it. "Why don't you like it? It was mailed here in town last night or early this morning, and the address has been cut out from a sheet of pharmacy stationery." "That's so," the pharmacist corroborated. He stared at the postman, uneasy and embarrassed, as if he were waiting for some explanation or decision. "It's an anonymous letter," the postman said. "An anonymous letter," the pharmacist echoed. He had not touched it yet, but this letter, he already sensed, would shatter his domestic life. It was a bolt of lightning flashing down to incinerate a woman. The beautiful, slightly faded, slightly slovenly woman who at the moment was in the kitchen preparing to put a roast of kid into the oven for supper. "There's still a vice with people around here. They're anonymous letters," the postman said. He had dropped his mailbag on a chair and propped himself against the counter. He was waiting for the pharmacist to make up his mind to open the letter. He had delivered it intact, had forborne opening it first, taking all necessary precautions naturally, trusting in the affability and ingenuousness of the recipient. "If he opens it and it's got to do with sleeping around, he won't tell me anything," the postman thought. "But if it's a threat or something, he'll show it to me." Either way, he was not going to leave without finding out. Time he had, and plenty. "An anonymous letter from me?" the pharmacist said after a long silence. His voice was surprised and indignant, but his face was terrified, pale, eyes flickering, tiny beads of sweat from his upper lip. Apart from the quivering curiosity that gripped him, the postman shared that amazement and indignation. This was a good man, a feeling, generous man, who in his pharmacy gave credit to everyone, and who on the property that had come to him as his wife's dowry let his farmers do as they pleased. As to the wife, the postman had never heard the slightest reflection cast on her. Abruptly, the pharmacist decided. He picked up the envelope, opened it, unfolded the letter. The postman saw what he had expected to see. The letter was pieced together out of newsprint. The pharmacist drank his bitter cup in one draught. 2 lines. Then, well, he said, relieved, almost amused. "No sex business," the postman thought. And aloud he said, "What is it? A threat?" "A threat," the pharmacist confirmed. He handed over the letter. The postman took it greedily and read aloud, "This letter is your death sentence. To avenge what you have done, you will die." He folded the sheet and placed it on the counter. "It's a joke," he said, and believed what he said. "It may be a joke, you think?" the pharmacist asked, with a twinge of anxiety. "What else can it be? A joke. Some people's horns itch them so that they go around playing tricks like this. It isn't the first time. They even do it by telephone." "That's so?" the pharmacist said. "That's happened to me. The phone rings in the middle of the night. I go to answer, and a woman's voice asks whether I've lost a dog. She's found a dog that's half blue and half pink, and somebody's told her it was mine. That's a joke. But this is a death threat." "Same thing," the postman said, with authority. He picked up his bag and started out. "Don't give it a second thought," he said, by way of farewell. "I won't," the pharmacist said, but the postman had already gone. He did think about it, however. Pretty heavy-handed for a joke. Even if it was a joke, what else could it be? Yet what else could it be? He had never quarreled with anyone. He did not mix in politics, did not even discuss politics, and how he voted was known to no one but himself. Socialist and national elections out of family tradition and memories of his youth. Christian Democrat in local elections out of local patriotism. For when the Christian Democrats were in office, they managed to wangle some community benefits from the government, and also as a safeguard against income tax threatened by the leftist parties. But never any political talk. Men on the right took him for a man on the right, and those on the left for a man of the left. To get involved with politics was a waste of time. In any case, if you didn't know that much, either you found politicking profitable or you'd been born blind. In a word, he lived a quiet life. And this was perhaps one reason that he might have sparked the anonymous letter. Such a settled man would make another man who lived in idleness and mischief itch to upset, to frighten him. Or perhaps he should look for a different reason in the one passion he did have, and that was hunting. Everyone knows hunters are a jealous lot. All you need is to have a good ferret or a good dog, and every other hunter in town hates you. Even the men who are your friends, who go hunting with you, who come every evening to sit around the pharmacy and talk. Hunting dogs poisoned. How many cases of that there'd been in town? Owners of the finest dogs, that is, who dared let them run free in the square of an evening, risked finding them curled up dead. Strychnine, and someone who knows might put two and two together and link strychnine with the pharmacy. Unfairly, of course, because for Dr. Manot, a dog was as sacred as any god, especially the champion hunters, whether his own or his friends. His own were kept safely out of poison's way. He had 11 hounds, most of them a Cyrenaic breed, cared for like Christians. They were well fed and had the house garden at their disposal for all their needs, and for play. They were a pleasure to see and to hear too. Their baying made the neighbors grumble sometimes, but to the ears of the pharmacist it was music. He could distinguish each dog's voice and determine the condition of each, whether he was happy or off his feed or suffering from a touch of distemper. Oh no, what other explanations could there be? It was a joke, but a joke up to a point. Someone wanted to frighten him, so on that Wednesday, which was his free day, he would not go hunting. All modesty aside, what with his dog's prowess and his own infallible aim, every Wednesday was a massacre of hares and rabbits. To this, Dr. Rocio, his customary companion, could testify. Rocio was also a good marksman, also had good dogs, but even so, and thus it was that, in the end, the anonymous letter flattered his vanity. It attested to his fame as a hunter. The season was about to open. As a matter of fact, someone wanted to make him miss out on that first great day, which whether it fell on a Wednesday or not, was for the pharmacist the most glorious day of the year. Musing on the by now certain intent of the letter, and on the identity of its author, the pharmacist pulled out his little wicker chair and sat down in the sliver of shade cast by the houses opposite. Facing him was the bronze statue of Mercutio Spano, Doctor of Law, Under Secretary of the Postal Service. In the harsh afternoon light, and in his dual capacity as a man of law and custodian of the post, Spano's shadow stretched out meditatively over all anonymous letters. This mildly ironic fancy occurred to the pharmacist as he glanced up. But then, ironic fancy turned quickly into the bitter reflections of a man who, unfairly attacked, discovers how high his own humanity soars above the spitefulness of other men, and who can only reproach and commiserate with himself, that he should be so incapable of malice. As for the shadows of Mercutio Spano touched the walls of the Castello di Asciariamonte, which stood on the opposite sides of the little square. The pharmacist was so lost in his own thoughts that Don Luigi Cravalla believed him asleep. "Wake up," he shouted, and the pharmacist started, smiling, and rose to fetch a chair for Don Luigi. "What a day," Don Luigi sighed, collapsing into the chair. "The thermometer hit 90, the pharmacist said. "But the air's getting fresher now. You'll see tonight. We'll need a blanket." "Who can make head or tail of anything anymore? Even the weather," the pharmacist said bitterly. And he decided to tell his news immediately so that Don Luigi could take care of passing it along to all the friends who would stop by. "I've received an anonymous letter," he said. "An anonymous letter? A threat." He rose to go get it. The reaction of Don Luigi upon reading those two tremendous lines was first, "Christ," and then, "It's a joke." The pharmacist agreed that it was a joke. A joke, yes, but perhaps with a purpose. What purpose? To keep me from hunting. Yes, that's possible. You hunters are capable of anything, Don Luigi decried hunting as being unreasonably expensive and strenuous, while fully appreciating stewed pheasant and the sweet and sour rabbit. "Not all hunters," the pharmacist corrected him. Of course. Every rule has its exception. But you know what some of you are capable of. Strike 9 in the meatball, the shot aimed at the friend's dog, instead of at the rabbit the dog is chasing. You're indecent. What's the dog done to you? I'd like to know. Good or bad, a dog's a dog. If you people had the stuff it takes, you should have it out with the master. It's not the same thing. On occasion, the pharmacist had known flashes of envy with regard to the dogs of others, but never, of course, to the extent of wishing them dead. To me, it's the same thing. A man who's capable of killing a dog in cold blood will be capable of killing a Christian as easily as he'd recite the Lord's Prayer. But, he added, perhaps that's because I'm no hunter. They discussed the psychology of hunters virtually the whole evening, because each new arrival was told the story anew, beginning with the anonymous letter and concluding with the dark jealousy, envy, and worse of all, those who practice the ancient and honorable sport of hunting. Excepting those present, naturally, although Don Luigi Cravalla entertained suspicions even of those present, both as regarded the poisoning of dogs and the anonymous letter. From under wrinkled lids, his sharp little eyes scrutinized their faces. Dr. Rossio, Pecorella the notary, Rossello the lawyer, Professor Laurana, the pharmacist himself, who could be not only a dog poisoner, but also the author of the letter, thereby supplying himself with a testimonial to his being a fearsome hunter. In a word, Don Luigi, bred in the ways of mistrust, suspicion, and malice, was prepared to attribute each man as much spitefulness as his own mind secretly distilled. All were agreed, however, in adjudging that the letter should be taken as a joke, malevolent in any circumstances, and worse still if it really aimed at keeping the pharmacist away from the formal opening day of hunting season. When the marshal of the Carabinieri passed by, as he did every evening, the pharmacist was quite prepared to turn the whole thing into a joke, facetiously pretending that he was in the grip of fear and prostration. He lamented the fact that in a town protected by the marshal, an honest person, a good citizen, a decent family man, should be threatened with death just like that. "What's happened?" the marshal asked, expecting some absurd revelation. He looked amused already, but he became serious when he was shown the letter. It could be a joke, perhaps. No doubt it was a joke, but the offense existed and had to be reported. "What do you mean reported?" said the pharmacist, who was by now euphoric. "Oh yes, there must be a report. That's the law." "All right, I'll save you the trouble of coming over to the barracks, and we'll write it out here. But it must be done. It only takes a minute." They went inside. The pharmacist lighted the lamp that stood on the corner and began to write as the marshal dictated. The marshal was dictating. He was holding the letter open so that the light of the lamp fell slantingly on it. Professor Lorana, who was curious about the form and language of the complaint, clearly saw the word uniqui emerge through the reverse side of the paper, and then in smaller letters confusedly, natural order, menti observantur, time, seat. He moved closer to better decipher the words and read aloud human, whereupon the marshal was annoyed and defending what was from now on a secret of his office, said, "Please don't you see that I'm dictating?" "I was reading the back of the clipping," the professor said to excuse himself. The marshal dropped his hand and folded the letter. "It might be a good idea if you were to examine it that way too." The professor was a bit miffed. "We would do all that is necessary, you may be sure," the marshal said hauntingly, and he resumed his dictation.